Before I get into the incident, let me just give you guys some context. My husband, Alex, and I have been together for 3 years and married for a little over 9 months now. Our decision to get married had definitely been influenced by the fact that I was pregnant at the time. But before anybody jumps to conclusions, let me just make it very clear that this was not a shotgun wedding or whatever. We had been planning on getting engaged and married around that time anyway. Alex and I had been thinking about getting married at the time but hadn't gotten engaged yet, since we were waiting for the right time. And then when we found out about the pregnancy, we realized that this was exactly the right time that we had been waiting for because the baby seemed to be a sign from the universe of sorts. We were really happy and decided to get married within a few weeks of finding out about our pregnancy. It was not as if we were doing it because we had to, we were doing it because we wanted to. However, I don't think that everybody agreed with that, especially my sister-in-law. Nina, my sister-in-law, made her feelings very clear about the matter by calling me a gold digger who had baby-trapped her younger brother and refused to attend the wedding. Our wedding was pretty small. We literally got married in his family home's backyard with only our immediate families in attendance and a couple of friends. It was a really intimate ceremony, so I don't understand why Nina thought I was being a gold digger, because if I really wanted to show off and profit off of my husband's wealth, the first thing that I would do was have an elaborate and lavish wedding with a bunch of guests whom I wanted to impress. Even while we had been dating, I knew that Nina and even her mom didn't particularly like me because I came from a pretty humble home in comparison to them. My husband belongs to a business family. His dad's a business tycoon in the industry and he has had a pretty comfortable life. Both my parents were teachers and I think they did a pretty good job of raising me and giving me a comfortable life, so I'm very grateful to them. And I'm a working woman, so how wealthy or poor my husband's family is makes no difference to me. Never had and never will, and as long as Alex knew that, it didn't matter to me what his family thought, so even though I knew that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law didn't really approve of me, I didn't make a difference. They always acted very snobby around me, but I never even acknowledged it, and I guess that would make them even more upset. However, neither of them wanted Alex to cut them out of their lives, which is why they put up with me, and Alex was always very apologetic for his family's behavior, but I didn't want to put him in a position where he would have to pick and choose, so I never made a big deal out of it either until Nina called me a gold digger before the wedding. It was around the time that we sent out invitations to the wedding to our families since we had decided to skip the engagement. Before that, we had obviously announced and told everyone that we intended to get married, and even Nina had been present there. I could see that she and my mother-in-law were not happy about it, but did not say anything, so I ignored their reaction as well. However, after she received an invitation, she decided to call me and tell me that there was no way she would be attending because, for a long time, she had hoped that her brother would come to his senses and realize that I was not a good match for him because I would never fit into this family, but since he was bent on ruining his life and the family's reputation, she had decided that she didn't want anything to do with him anymore. As a form of protest against this marriage, she would not be attending because I was a gold digger, and she had been able to see right through me, and she knew that I was just trying to trap my brother in a marriage with a baby and get my share of his family's money. She even put up a public post on social media saying the same things about me, but took it down later on at her father's insistence. I found that incredibly hurtful because the implication that I was only getting married to him and keeping the baby because I wanted his money, it was just really insulting. That was the day that I finally decided to tell Alex that I had had enough and I did not want Nina to ever have any contact with us again, and he gladly agreed. He was so angry that after I told him what had happened, he called Nina up and really went ham on her before telling her that he never wanted to hear from her again. And he also knew that his mother wasn't exactly on board with me either, so he sat down with me and his family, and told his parents that he didn't care what they thought, but if they misbehaved with me, he would not hesitate in cutting them out of his life. To be honest, he didn't really have to say that to his father because my father-in-law has always been very humble and been very kind to me. But anyway, my mother-in-law probably didn't want to take the risk of having her only son cut her off, so she begrudgingly decided to accept me into the family. We got married and since then, I have had absolutely no contact with Nina. I thought that maybe after our marriage, my mother-in-law would not be so insufferable anymore, but I was proven wrong a couple of weeks ago, just a few days before my baby shower. It was obviously a given that after everything that had happened, I was not going to invite Nina to my baby shower. Alex and I had decided to keep the guest list just as intimate as it had been for our wedding, and it was pretty much the same people. But obviously, Nina was not on the list, and I guess somehow, my mother-in-law had been able to figure it out. So a few days before the event, she called me to ask me if Nina was going to be invited or not, and I said no. I don't even know why she bothered to ask. I think she must have known that she was not going to get a positive response. And when I told her that Nina had not received an invitation because I did not want her at my baby shower, Since it was supposed to be a happy day, my mother-in-law started freaking out at me and said that it was wrong for me to invite both our families but exclude Nina on purpose. She accused me of trying to isolate her son from his family, which didn't even make sense because I was not the one who had made him cut Nina off. He had chosen to make that decision himself because he didn't approve of her attitude towards me either. And even if I had forced him to cut off, could you even blame me? Anybody in my place would have done the same thing. And because I was heavily pregnant at the time, I was quite hormonal and irritable as well. So the second she started accusing me of random crap, I decided that I was not going to take this from her. I had enough of their BS behavior towards me just because they had more money than my family and I had put up with them for long enough because I didn't see any harm in keeping things peaceful, but now, I realized that they thought my decision to ignore them meant that I was scared of them and they could just say whatever they wanted to, and I would be fine with it. And that had to change, so I told her that I knew that Nina had a problem with my relationship with her brother and she didn't like me just because I wasn't uber wealthy like the rest of them. I also knew that she was of the same opinion, but she had just decided to attend the wedding because she did not want to lose access to her son. However, now she could either choose to completely and fully accept me or she could choose to be arrogant and cut me out of her life completely because I was done with this behavior. She was a bit taken aback and tried to reason with me, but in the same tone, and I was not having it. For some reason, she kept insisting that Nina was a part of the family and that since I was young and new to this family, it was my responsibility to make sure that I respected everyone else, so I should reach out to Nina and invite her, just for the sake of peace in the family. I thought that her reasons were ridiculous and I straight up told her that I was not going to do any of that, and if she didn't approve of my decision not to invite Nina, she was free not to attend the baby shower as well. It was completely up to her, and in the heat of the moment, she started yelling at me and told me that she should have stuck with Nina when her daughter decided that she was not going to attend our wedding because I was not a good fit for the family and I was a gold digger who only wanted to be with Alex for his money, and had even gotten pregnant to make sure that it all worked out for me. She said that if she had to choose between her own daughter and her daughter-in-law, she was obviously going to choose Nina and it was not even a dilemma for her. Then, I just hung up because I was done with that conversation and blocked her immediately afterward. But that was not where it ended, unfortunately, because she decided to reach out to me on social media before I could block her and send me a couple of really awful texts. She told me that she knew Nina had been right about me all along and that somebody like me would never have been able to fit into their family because I wasn't even raised right, that I didn't have any class and that her son had made a grave mistake in choosing the right fit for the family. She also said that now that I was in my final trimester of the pregnancy, she was just waiting for me to have an affair with somebody else who's more in my league, file for a divorce from her son, and then try to get alimony and child support because that's obviously what I was here for since I didn't even love my husband enough to try and maintain a good relationship with his family. Lastly, she told me that if her daughter was not invited to a family event, then it was hardly a family event and so, she didn't think it was important for her to attend either. That was the last text that she sent me before I blocked her on social media as well, and like I said, since I was pregnant, I was quite hormonal and irritable, but I was also feeling very emotional and so, I ended up having a total breakdown over those messages. My husband had been at work that day, so I decided to call him and get him to come back home so he could calm me down, and he did so. Alex is a wonderful person, so it didn't take him long to read those messages, take stock of the situation and immediately tell me that he had decided that he was going to cut his mother off as well. The only person in his family who had stayed in touch with us, even after that incident, was his father because like I said, he was a good and humble man. My father-in-law even told me that he had tried to talk to his wife several times and explained that I was not the kind of person that they thought was, but it didn't even matter because it always ended in a huge fight and he had stopped trying altogether. My baby shower was only attended by my parents, Alex and his father, and a couple of our friends, and I was completely fine with that because I realized that these were the people who actually cared for me, and I was really glad that my mother-in-law and Nina were not there. And then, a few weeks ago, I finally gave birth to my beautiful daughter, and even on the day of her birth, it was just a few people who were there. Once again, I was quite grateful that my Mill and Nina were not there because they were just negative presences in my life and I already made up my mind and I didn't want anything to do with them anymore. I had kept my cool and ignored their awful behavior for quite a while, but they had never changed. Even Alex didn't want anything to do with them anymore, so it was all good. After the birth of our daughter, both Alex and I got really busy with her and didn't have time to think about these things either. But I had taken note of the fact that neither of these had even bothered to reach out to us to congratulate us or even ask about the baby. I thought it was pretty strange that they claimed that they loved Alex, but didn't seem to care even a bit for such a huge milestone in his life. I had even spoken about this to him, but he told me that he didn't care because all that mattered was that I was with him and that our daughter was healthy. Besides, the only member of his family who actually mattered, his father, had been quite active and involved, so we were fine with everything else. I honestly hadn't expected my mother-in-law to reach out to me anytime soon, but then, a couple of days ago, she showed up at our house and started demanding to see her granddaughter. At first, I had even refused to open the door to let her in and I told her to go away, but she was someone who had said that it was her right as the grandmother of the baby to be allowed to see her and I had absolutely no business trying to stop her. I found that laughable because she had suddenly just remembered that she was the grandmother of this baby and yet, she hadn't been there for the baby shower or the birth and hadn't even bothered to congratulate us after that. So she really wasn't a grandmother by any definition of the word. You can't choose when you get to act like family and when you don't want to. So I told her that I did not consider her my family and as the mother of the baby that she was demanding to see, I think I definitely had the right to tell her that I wasn't gonna let her in. And then, she continued to argue with me so I decided to bring out my phone and read out the messages that she had sent to me after we had our fight before the baby shower. I read them out in those exact words, and then I told her that after this, if she still expects me to let her back into my life or even be part of my daughter's life, then she is either delusional or crazy. And then I slammed the door shut and told her to go away before I called the cops. She still didn't go away, though. She stayed outside and kept yelling at me for a couple of minutes before finally leaving. After she left, I finally called Alex and told him what just happened and he came back home from work. I am on maternity leave, so I'm at home most of the day, and I don't want this to happen again. So I told him that he needed to talk to his family and tell them that this was not acceptable. Earlier, it was they who did not want to accept me into their family and now, I don't want them as a part of my family. I think I'm being fair enough and what I'm asking for is completely reasonable. And my husband is on board with it, but surprisingly, my father-in-law thinks that I should give it some time before I come to a conclusion. Apparently, he was the one who had told his wife that she should visit me at least once and try to make things work with Alex and me, but I don't know what she was thinking, since instead of trying to make things better by apologizing, she decided to come here and start a fight with me. If anything, it made the situation much worse than it was before, but what I don't understand is my father-in-law's stand on the whole situation. He keeps telling us that he understands what we feel about his wife and daughter and yet, he thinks that we should give the situation some time to cool down and then try again. Basically, he told Alex not to speak to his mother right now about anything to do with me because the situation is quite heated and he doesn't want her to feel even more hurt than she already is because she has been quite distraught over the fact that her son hasn't been speaking to her and Nina has been very upset about it. I find it incredibly strange that my father-in-law expects us to take their feelings into account before we do anything, but that has never been the case with us. Neither Nina nor her mother has thought about me and how I feel about things or even how Alex feels about certain things before just saying and doing whatever they want to. Alex had decided to call his father up and speak to him before doing anything, and that has been his response. My father-in-law said that he has been having a hard time trying to keep everything together in the family and he doesn't want Alex to make things worse by telling his mother that she's not allowed to see her granddaughter right now and that she needs to stay away from our family. My only gripe with the situation is that if Alex doesn't speak to her right now, she's gonna think that she can do this again, and I don't have the capacity to deal with it right now. So it is very important for me that this is made clear to her so she avoids showing up again. Both Alex and I found it very upsetting that he was suddenly acting like this, even though he had always been on our side wholeheartedly in the past. We found it very difficult to understand what had caused the sudden change in his behavior and I had started to feel really agitated by how he had continued to argue with Alex, even after being explained everything. So in a moment of anger, I told my father-in-law that it was hardly shocking that he had decided to choose this time to be diplomatic about this whole situation because now that I think about it, that has been his stance throughout the fight that I've been having with Nina and her mother. Because even though he keeps taking our side and keeps telling us that we are right, it doesn't really matter because, at the end of the day, he still hasn't done anything to show that he is actually with us. His wife and daughter have said so many hurtful things to me and all that he has done is argue with them for a bit, but he hasn't gotten them to apologize to us. He expects us to be considerate of their feelings at the moment. So I ended up saying to him that it was clear that they all belong to the same family now, and that created quite a stir because even Alex felt quite offended by that since he thinks that it's not very kind of me to group him and his father in the same bracket as his sister and his mom since he doesn't think that they are alike in any way whatsoever. Now, he thinks that not only do I owe him an apology, which I do, but he also thinks that I owe his father an apology. His take is that families are complicated and his father probably didn't have any bad intentions, but I took it too far. Now I have apologized to Alex, but I'm holding out on the apology to my father-in-law because I'm still upset by the fact that he expects us to be considerate of Nina and her mother's feelings, especially when they have never been considerate of mine. So Ida for telling my father-in-law that it's clear he belongs to the same family as my mother-in-law and sister-in-law as an insult? Update 1. Hey, thank you so much for all the comments and the advice that you guys gave me. It really means a lot, and yeah, after a lot of thinking, I decided to speak to my father-in-law. I didn't outright apologize to him and tell him that I was really terribly sorry for the words that I used, but I explained that it had come from a place of hurt and betrayal, and I also explained why I had been feeling that way because all this. I had always thought that he was completely on our side and would keep fighting for us. But right now, the way he was trying to take a diplomatic stand on the situation just didn't sit right with me. So I decided to call him, and it was a bit disrespectful, so I would like to apologize for that. We were speaking to each other on the phone, and he was reasonable enough, so he told me that he forgave me because had he been in my place, he probably would have been feeling the same way. And I probably had a lot on my mind as well, since we were new parents and the first time around. It's obviously very difficult to cope with so much that's happening. On top of that, my mother-in-law must not have made it easier for me by showing up and trying to push me around. He told me that he completely understood that, but the day that it happened and she had come back home, she started crying immediately and was having a breakdown about how much she missed her son. So keeping that in mind, he had decided to tell us that we needed to let things cool off a little bit before telling her that she wasn't allowed to come here anymore because he was afraid that it would push her off the edge. He also explained that he was against how his wife and daughter were behaving, but he couldn't exactly abandon them, not at this point in his life, because his wife has always been very supportive of him, even when he had his tough phases, and Nina is his daughter, so well, that's an explanation in itself. And I respected that. It was his personal choice and I'm not gonna question it. Anyway, we talked it out and the conversation ended on a good note, so I'm happy with my decision to speak to him. Things between Alex and I are fine as well, since I apologized to him that day itself because I immediately regretted what I had said, since I know that he really isn't like his mom or sister. He's very different from all of them and I love him, so I sorted things out with him immediately. We have also decided that we are going to wait before we contact his mother and tell him that she needs to stay away at the moment like my father-in-law had advised us to. Update 2. Hi. So it's been a little over a week since my mother-in-law visited, and we had their fight, and today, Alex and I spoke to his father again, and he told us that we could speak to his mother now since she was back to her usual self, which meant that she had gone back to ranting about me all the time. Alex decided to unblock her just so he could send her a message, saying that he did not want her coming around after the incident that had taken place the other day, since it was very obvious that she did not approve of me, and if she was going to be disrespectful, then she had no business coming around and expecting me to let her see our daughter. Because our baby was my daughter first and her granddaughter second. He also told her that she had not bothered to even reach out to him and congratulate him when he became a father, so it's quite stupid of her to claim that she has the right to see her granddaughter whenever she wants to because she's the grandma. He could understand that she and Nina had not reached out to me and congratulated me because they didn't like me, but they claimed to be his well-wishers and said that they loved him, which is why they didn't like me in the first place, so it didn't make sense that they hadn't even bothered to congratulate him if they cared about him so much. Honestly, it was a pretty valid point, and he got a lot of the built-up resentment out of the system with that message. After he sent it, he blocked his mother again, and later on, we found out from my father-in-law that she had an anger outburst after she received that message and she was going to come visit us again, so she could speak to us in person, but my father-in-law had stopped her, and that had ended another huge fight between the two of them. I know a lot of you think that he should leave her, but I don't think that's going to happen, and I know for a fact that even this time, he's going to make it work with his wife. That's just how their marriage is, don't ask me. Update 3. Hi. So my daughter is 3 months old now and things have been great with her. In the past 3 months, Nina and her mother did not try to contact us at all after that message that Alex had sent us, and we were quite relieved. But we did stay in touch with his father, though, since even though he did not want to leave the side of his family, he was still nice to us. And it was up to us how he wanted to deal with the situation, so as long as he was kind to us, we didn't have a problem keeping in touch with him. Recently, though, he had started telling us that because of that message that Alex had sent, he had been facing a lot of pressure from his wife and Nina to cut us off, and he had been fighting it as much as he could, but it was getting really hard for him to continue being diplomatic here. About a week ago, he showed up at our house with a duffel bag and asked us if we would be willing to let him stay with us for a couple of days. We agreed because we have a guest room and a housekeeper, so it's not going to be any extra work for either of us, and we could tell that he was having a lot of trouble dealing with the situation at home. He told us that things have been very difficult and he and his wife have been fighting almost every day, so we even advised him to get a divorce because that's not how a healthy marriage should be, but he flat out declined. He had his reasons since he couldn't abandon his family and stuff like that, so we managed to get him to agree to couples counseling at the very least. Then, a couple of days after he went back home and suggested the idea of couples counseling to his wife, Nina sent us an email saying that we had no right to interfere in their marriage, especially me, since I was not even part of the family. That really annoyed me, so I brought up how she had changed her surname after marriage, so technically, She was the one who was not actually part of the family anymore, and then we blocked that email as well. I don't know why she's so desperate to talk to me if she hates me so much, but anyway, my father-in-law said that he and his wife are going to couples counseling now, and I guess things might work out for them, or even if they don't, they're still gonna stay together, so it doesn't matter. But Alex and I are going strong and are having the time of our lives with our daughter, so none of these things matter to us. It's just a loss for his mother and his sister that they never gonna get to know our daughter, but well, I guess it's for the best.